5. We have present in the meeting Councillor Brogan, Kalikis, Clark, Cowie, Ferguson. We don't have Councillor Lambie in the meeting. We have present Councillor McClymont. We don't have Councillor McGeever in the meeting. We have present Councillor Razak, and we have apologies from Councillor Robb. We also have present various officers and trade union representatives. I'll hand back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have the declarations of interest? If there's any declarations of interest? No, I don't see any. So we'll go quickly on to agenda item 2. That's the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 28th of May 25. Are there any questions? No. So can I move the minutes to be approved as a correct record? Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, the Council-wide Workforce Monitoring Report for the 1st of April to 30th of June 25. Can I ask Elaine Maxwell to speak to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. As you'll see, this is a Council-wide Workforce Monitoring Report, and it will cover the period from the 1st of April to the 30th of June this year. Just looking at the key points as detailed within the report, referring to section 4 within the report, and you'll see the appendices through Appendix 1 to Appendix 8. So you'll see that the Council's absence rate for the month of June was 5.4%, and that's reflecting a slight decrease of 0.2% when we compare ourselves to the previous month, and it's an increase of the same percentage though when we're looking at the same period last year. Again, you'll see that the main reasons for absence are consistent, as we report in this forum, as being psychological and musculoskeletal conditions. And you will also see that the total days lost for both of those main reasons are showing an increased number of days lost. Psychological has gone up by 159 days, musculoskeletal has gone up by 11 days for that period. Moving on then to section 5 of the report, which outlines the occupational health information, which again can be found in Appendix 9. You will see that medical referrals are reported as 520 for this period, showing an increase of 50 in comparison with the same period last year. There have been 466 physiotherapy referrals. And again, as we always do, we capture the information which reflects where an employee is at work or not during the treatment, and the information shows that 73% of those that access that service remained at work. Moving on to the employee support information, there were 423 referrals made to the employee support officer, with 86% of those advising that the reason for the absence was linked to personal reasons. Counselling Service have recorded 121 referrals to PAM during that period, with 53 referrals for CBT. And again, members may be familiar that the numbers of CBT certainly have been reported as an increase over the last wee while, and that reflects the triage process that's happening within PAM to ensure that people are being signposted to CBT rather than counselling. So when you look at the counselling and the CBT figures together, it's still up in comparison to last year, but together it's not too far out. Section 6 then moves on to the accident and incident information recorded for the Council, and you'll see there were 410 accidents and incidents, with 388 investigated and categorised within the period. Section 7 then reflects the discipline, grievance and dignity at work information, and again the background information is referred to in Appendix 11 and 12, showing that throughout the Council there were 66 disciplinary hearings held, and there was action taken in 64 of those cases. There were 10 grievances raised, and at the time of the report being written, all were in the process of being investigated, and that's similar to dignity at work complaints, where there was 5 and all were currently being investigated at that time. During this period, there were no referrals for mediation between April and June. Moving on then to the leavers and exit interview information, we can see that there were 113 eligible leavers for an exit interview, and that reflects a turnover rate of 0.7%. In respect of exit interviews that have taken place, there were 24 conducted, again showing a decrease from last year. But again, as you know, that we try and encourage, it's not mandatory that people uptake in exit interviews, but we do try and encourage that where possible to give us as much information as we possibly can. Section 9 then details the recruitment information, and obviously there's a lot of stats then available within the appendices, but you'll see that in terms of applications, as a council we received 7,262 applications throughout that period, and 7,236 individuals completed their equal opportunities monitoring form. Apologies, nearly tripped over my own tongue there. There does then detail a breakdown in terms of the disabled applicants, black and ethnic minority applicants, and the veterans. So you'll see in terms of disability, there was 20 applicants appointed, black and ethnic minority 17 appointed, and for veterans there were 3. And finally, at section 10 within the report, when we look at the staffing watch information, and that counts employees at the point of June 2025 against the March 25 figure, you'll see there was a decrease of 31 employees. So with that, I would refer you back to section 2 within the report and ask for the forum to note the information that's been presented, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Are there any questions? Elaine, I think I had one question which I had asked. It was about the exit interviews. And I know that from 113 employees, we had only 24 exit interviews. Is there any work being done to try? I know that previous terms that there has been work being done. But are we doing anything different to try and get a better number?
I think certainly when we moved over to the fusion system, Councillor Razak, I think you'll recall what we were saying, we were trying to pinpoint, get that, there was specific form, and making sure that we were, sending the link out and every opportunity to get that link out. So the difficulty is because it's mandatory and people are, by the time they've decided to leave, they've decided they've gone, and they're perhaps not wanting to engage or give us any more information. What we have seen, whilst the numbers remain low, is the detail within the forms that are now being submitted is more comprehensive than we've had before. What I'll do is I'll take it back to the team to see if there's anything else or anything further that we could possibly do to try and capture that information. It does become quite difficult even, to ask for a manager to say, remember, fill in that exit interview form, or, it's online, can you please complete it? But we're trying really, really hard every possible way. Happy if then just get any suggestions in terms of anything else we could do, but falling short of making it mandatory, and even at that, I'm not quite sure what else you can do if someone then chooses not to complete it because they have already indicated that they're leaving the organisation, and in some occasions actually, particularly if it, focus on community and enterprise resources, a lot of individuals don't necessarily give you notice periods, so they have already gone and left, so then trying to access and get that. But happy to look at any other options that are available to us that would allow us to capture more information. Councillor Razak.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, Tony.
Councillor Razak, it was just a question. Is there anything that can be done for the frontline staff? I think the road workers, refuse collectors, that sort of thing, where a manager could engage with them and actually go through the leaving form with them, because a lot of people there find it difficult to do a lot of stuff online and also fill in forms manually.
Okay. Elaine?
Hi, Tony. Whilst happy that, we can certainly ask managers to engage in that, I think the difficulty is that, and for some of them, they may not want to share the reason for them leaving with the manager. I think you'll recall where we've, particularly if individuals are wanting to speak to somebody, they may contact, whether it be the trade union or whether it be personnel. So it's certainly something we could ask people to, if they wanted to, but I think it would be a wee bit difficult just in terms of some of the information they may or may not want to share. That would be my only concern around that. But I appreciate it as just a thought about trying to gather as much information, Tony, as possible.
That's what it is. It's just to gather as much information as possible. And can I say that the trade unions will be advising their members that it is it's a worthwhile exercise to fill in the form or speak to their manager before leaving. Thanks.
Elaine, I did ask in a pre-meeting that what we're doing obviously isn't working just now because we're not getting the numbers, and that's just historical because we have been going through the previous meetings as well. So have you considered something like incentive of some sort, you know, even if it's a financial incentive, saying that, you know, if you fill this questionnaire in before you leave, you get £50 or something? Because at the end of the day, if it's worth their while to fill that form in, maybe they'll do it. But if it's not worth their while when they're leaving the job, then they might not do it. Has something like that been considered?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Razak, but I'll certainly ask the question if you've raised it at a previous meeting to see what, if the head of personnel's given it. But in my time, I'm not aware of that. And obviously I've been probably with the council for quite some time now, so certainly not been anything that's been presented that I've been made aware of anyway. Okay,
like I said before, if the other things don't work, then you have to just have a look and see if you can try something new. Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, then we're on to agenda item 4. Oh, sorry, apologies. I'm in a hurry today. Can I move this report to be accepted? Can show of hands. Everyone okay?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Agenda item 4, Community and Enterprise Resources Workforce Monitoring Report, 1st of April to 30th of June 25. Can I ask Elaine to speak for that? Elaine again.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Razak. So this report reflects the same period covering employment information and this time specifically for community and enterprise resources. So again, just running through the key points within the report, section 4 outlines the absence statistics, and you'll see that for the resource, the absence rate for June 25 was 6.8%, again showing a slight increase from the previous month of 0.2%, and obviously you'll see that the community and enterprise figure is higher than the council-wide figure. When we look at the annual averages, you know that we always do in terms of trying to get that balance in terms of what the percentage is going to be like for the year. For the resource, it's reflecting a 6.8% annual average compared to a council-wide annual average of 6%. Moving on then to the occupational health information, which is in Appendix 2, you'll see that there were 353 occupational health referrals in terms of medical examinations, physiotherapy, and again that reflects an increase of 29 from the previous year. Again, you'll know that where we are seeing that increase in occupational health referrals and support mechanisms is absolutely what we would expect to see, particularly if absence levels are increasing, and it shows that managers are following the process by making sure they're getting the appropriate occupational health advice. Section 4.3 then goes on to detail the accident and incident statistics, and we can see that there were 38 recorded for the resource for that period, which is reflecting a decrease of 20 when we compare ourselves to the same period last year. And again, members will know that we've now just recently moved on to the new platform where we've gone back to self-service, so we're hoping that the figures will certainly balance out, given that it's going to be led by the employee. 4.4 then outlines the employee relations activity within the resource, and again that's found in Appendix 2, and you'll see that there were 33 hearings held, disciplinary hearings heard during that period, 3 grievances and 3 dignity at work complaints. The analysis of leavers and exit interviews show that there were 33 leavers eligible for an exit interview, and that there were 6 conducted, and that figure remains unchanged from the previous year. And I would just reiterate you know, the conversation we just had in terms of the council-wide position. Looking then at the staffing watch information, which is on Appendix 3, we can see that there was an increase of 36 employees between the period of March in terms of the Staffing Watch report to the June Staffing Watch report, and that will be primarily linked to the seasonal intake that we have within the ground service for the resource. So with that, again, I would refer you back to section 2 of the report and ask that the information contained within this report for Community and Enterprise Resources is noted. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any questions? Catherine?
Thanks, Chair. It's because you're getting a comparison. I've got this question, Elaine. So it's about the an analysis for a reason of leaving, and it's a childcare and caring responsibilities has gone up from 1 the previous year to 4 this year. And I know it can just be the timing, etc. But obviously the council have got some good policies around that. So when you get that feedback, or before you get the feedback, I presume that the managers went through with this member of staff that we've got these policies and they're available to them. Or has there been a change in the policy or the flexibility of the policy? Because I know there's been a wee change in the, quite a big significant change, I would say, in the flexible working, your flexi time that you used to get. So is that having an impact? Are we looking at that when we get, it's all very well we get the feedback, but what are we doing with it when we get it? Thanks.
Thank you. We always hope that we get any questions like this that are dealt with before an individual has decided that they want to leave the organisation. So when we do, we would absolutely be making sure that the manager and or personnel, including the trade unions, if that's appropriate, discuss all of the policies that are in place that would support an employee to remain in employment, and that would be, in terms of flexible working, it may be around, an individual wanting to change the hours that they work. Obviously, it may be that they want to go term time, but for some individuals, it's just that, nothing suits, their particular circumstances that they find themselves in. So in most circumstances, we would hope that we would do that beforehand. It would depend on when this information came to light. So I know that if anything comes into personnel, we would ask somebody to hold their termination and their resignation letter until we've explored all of those options. So we're trying to do all of that, kind of front-ended, Councillor McClymont, rather than, after the horse is bolted in terms of they've already left the organisation. But as much information we have, then it allows us to explore to see whether there was anything else that we could do. In terms of the majority of their policies and procedures have not changed. Yes, there's been some new guidance in terms of agile working and a bit of a shift around that, in terms of the split between home and office-based working. However, agile working or working from home is not a substitute for childcare, and that's always been the case. So there's been no shift in respect of that. But yeah, anything that comes to ourselves, we would certainly make sure that between myself, the teams, the trade unions and the managers were having that discussion to make sure that all options are considered before an employee decides that they ultimately, that if that's what they decide that they want to go, then we couldn't stop them, but we'll try and explore all the options beforehand. Thank you.
Okay. On a similar vein, I've noticed that one of them is from 0 to 4 is poor relationship with managers and colleagues. Again, what work is done to try and help address that?
Yeah, so again, similarly, quite often the approach will come via either the trade union or it will come directly to personnel. And if somebody actually indicates on their leaver letter that was the reason why they were leaving, we would reach out to that individual to say, you be aware, we've got policies and procedures, don't make a hasty decision, come in and speak to us, and we'll go through all of that with them. Again, sometimes we've had a lot of good success on that, where we've been able to, facilitate through a process and allowed someone to change their mind to say, right, okay, there are routes that I can take here that to avoid actually leaving the organisation. But it's just at a point in time when that comes through. So we're very, very proactive in that front. In terms of, whether it comes in through a grievance, comes in even just, as I say, sometimes it comes in just through the resignation letter. We will pick that up. We don't just accept it and process it. we then say, right, okay, somebody reach out to that individual to make sure that they understand what these policies and procedures are there to do, what supports are in place, direct them to the trade union if they are in one, to try and cover all of those avenues before somebody decides to, that, you know, ultimately that that's what they want to do, that they want to leave. So I would hope that we cover all of that, but unfortunately, you know, that there will be sometimes, if that's what somebody's indicated in their exit interview, that's already happened. But I would hope that we've made all of those attempts beforehand, Councillor Razak.
Okay, thank you. I would say that the original pack that you give to the new staff members have got all this in detail anyway. I remember reading up about that one on a previous occasion because of a question that was raised. But are the staff told throughout their time working for the council that this is available to them?
Obviously, we've, as you said, you know, we've got an induction process in terms of making sure that individuals are signposted to all of your policies and procedures, and depending on what job they come in will be whichever ones you're focusing on more specifically. Been doing a piece of work in terms with our learning and development colleagues just around that induction process, trying to get a wee bit more what's available actually face-to-face information. And from a personnel point of view, what we're trying to do is look at, right, okay, well, you know, we don't want to inundate people with these are the policies, these are the procedures, these are the supports, but actually can we then do kind of a bit of a drip feed throughout the year in terms of a reminder of all of these, particularly around the employee wellbeing and the health and wellbeing supports. I think we're very good at that, but it's just making sure that we're sending that out. And one of the things we probably want to be able to do is get this kind of catalogue, so that if somebody needs to be able to go onto the internet and find anything, they know which policy they can refer to. Certainly from a personnel team, we take lots of calls from individual employees from a range of things, because they know our details are out there, they know who they can contact for whichever specific resource. So we try and provide that support as well. So just trying to look at all different avenues and areas, and to see what works best for different services and different resources, because obviously we appreciate it is different depending on what environment you're working in. You know, if we take community and enterprise resources, you know, you're ranging from the professional side in terms of those within planning, economic development, you know, to obviously your front line in terms of your waste, your grounds and your facilities employees, and about what information we can get and reach out to them. We presented a paper to the GICF recently around some of the good work that facilities have done to make sure that those employees have been able to tap into all of these wellbeing services, as well as then just being able to get some advice around, you know, whether it to be for personnel, we've got people there. So it's just about how do we reach out to everybody and make sure that we're covered. But it's certainly something that we're looking at, Councillor Razak. And again, if anybody's got any fantastic ideas, I am open to those.
No, it's not a fantastic idea. I was in John Street just a few months ago, still a few months now, and I didn't notice any signposting or any signs on the walls or anything about that. That's the reason I asked for this, is that I would have thought that any spaces where the council staff are, it would be good to have an A4 even note up with a QR code on it, and then, you know, explaining to them.
I'm unfamiliar with John Street in terms of the layout, but I'll ask the question. So I know that certainly in some areas they may have an area behind the scenes, you know, so I'm thinking about our own floor in terms of where some of those pieces of information are. But I think one of the key areas in terms of the council's intranet and a lot of the information that we post on there, which is why we then do the personnel circulars with those links, is just as that reminder, because it's popping into somebody's inbox. And because we've moved to Fusion, we have the vast majority of our employees' personal email addresses as well, so we can give out that information, and we know that we're reaching more employees than we ever have done before. But I'll certainly check the circumstances around John Street and make sure that information has been reached out to those individuals as well.
Well, can I ask one final one?
Yeah.
What is the open date for the internal emails to the employees with the information? Do you know that?
Sorry, what's the
Open date for the emails that are sent to your employees, you know, giving them information? Because what normally happens is that for your normal mail that you get, they said percentage usually, and usually the percentage is quite low. It's usually 33%, 32% open rate. And the reason I'm asking that is that it could be that the mail comes in and this gets deleted without being read. So that's just a question that maybe you should ask.
I don't know if we have that, but I'll ask the question if our IT are able to understand.
Your IT will have it because they should have a feedback, a report coming in to say that the email sent and how many have been opened.
Okay, I'll ask that question, Councillor Razak.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies for that one, Elaine, because I know that was a bit of a curve one. If there's no more questions, can I move that this report be agreed?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Margaret. Agreed? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 5, annual report on mainstreaming equalities and diversity, community and enterprise resources. Can I ask Alison Brown to speak, please?
Thank you and good afternoon. Yes, this is the annual report to the Forum on the strategic and operational work undertaken by community and enterprise resources to meet the commitments within the Mainstream Equalities Progress Report 2021-23 and South Lanarkshire's Working for You Mainstream Equalities 2021 to 25. In 2021, the Council published its Mainstream Equalities Report, and it has 5 equality outcomes identified. Those are set out as a reminder in paragraph 3.1. In terms of community and enterprise resources, we lead on equality outcome 2, which is older people, those from vulnerable groups and individuals who live alone are protected from scams and nuisance calls, and their well-being is improved through increased awareness and preventative action. At the foot of page 36, we've actually set out a number of activities undertaken during this year, including 9 presentations were delivered by Trading Standards to Police Scotland, Senior Together and Sheltered Housing. In addition, Consumer and Trading Standards have carried out a number of inspections on local businesses, and again, some details of that are provided at the top of page 37. Turning to key areas of progress for 24-25 for mainstreaming equalities, these are set out in section 5. I won't go through all of these, maybe just highlight a few. In 5.3.1, the Community and Enterprise Resources team, and that's actually Adam's own team, has been working with a climate justice PhD student from Caledonian University. And the student is undertaking a piece of work to identify those that are most vulnerable to climate change and what actions we can do to try and help improve that. In addition, community-led local development has supported a range of projects and residents, including 44 projects in the rural area, and some examples of that activity is provided in Appendix 1. In terms of our children and young people, community and enterprise resources through facilities services have been obviously provide a range of school meals, but these also include an adaptive diet menu and also a cultural menu. We have also been working through environmental services on an ongoing programme to prevent the sale of tobacco and nicotine vapour products. In terms of good quality, suitable and sustainable places to live, the planning service is ongoing work in terms of the new local development plan, and during the year there has been extensive engagement with partners and stakeholders as well as the wider community, and a place survey was published during 2024 which resulted in nearly 1,000 responses. Thriving businesses, job fairs and vibrant town centres. My own area of activity is doing significant work around East Kilbride and Hamilton master plans. There's been ongoing consultation with local residents, business community, and that will continue over a period of time. In terms of integrated impact assessments during 2024-25, the resource completed 2 equality impact assessments and 11 integrated impact assessments, and those are set out in paragraph 6.2. Section 7 details some of the training and employee activity, which Elaine has already highlighted. And with that, I turn back to the recommendation and ask the forum to note this report. Thank you.
Okay, Ross Glasgow.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to Alison for the report. I've got kind of a question and some sort of a comment. I'm looking at Equality Outcome 2 under 4.1.1 about protecting older people from scams and so on. I'll sort of take this in reverse order. So I'm looking at the Consumer and Trading Standards inspections, and I'm looking at the figures here. So for weights and measures related inspections, 169 visits, 119 contraventions, and there's similarly high figures based on contraventions, for fair trading related inspections. So just try to get kind of an idea of this. When we're so in terms of reporting on these contraventions, are we finding these are, how much of these are located in kind of certain inspections? Is it across multiple inspections, or do we find that when we are inspecting an establishment, we find a lot of kind of contraventions in one place? Just try to get an understanding of these figures, if they're spread out or they're kind of concentrated into a few places. Secondly, going up there, just looking at the scam and nuisance call section and looking at the true call units and just seeing kind of the impact of those, the tens of thousands of nuisance calls prevented. I think that's a really good, some really good figures there, some really good news about the impact of these devices and what we're doing to protect people and older people from scams. I do think there is another challenge in that now with the advancement of technology, the rise of AI. It will be getting a lot more difficult to prevent these scams and a lot easier for people who are perpetrating these scams to do so. Be much easier to fake a video, fake an audio recording, and on social media as well. For example, you could fake a video of you could probably fake a realistic video of Martin Lewis saying some bogus financial advice as an example. So I think there is another challenge there moving forward that I'm sure we are aware of, but something we need to continually adapt to.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Taking your first point around sort of the trading standards inspections, so some of those are standard inspections that are sort of routine. Others are potentially through intelligence, either through the community or through the police. My understanding is there's sort of geographical hotspots. I could get you some further information on that if that would be of interest. And again, I'm happy to circulate that around the forum. I think your comments around the nuisance calls and advancement of technology, I think you're absolutely sort of spot on there. Again, we can maybe ask trading standards, what they're trying to do to be front foot of that. So again, I can get some information for you on that.
Okay, thank you. Catherine?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your report, Alison. No, it's just around the true call units as well, because my mum's got one of these. I'm sure it's that. And I don't think AI will be able to infiltrate it, because you've actually got to physically press 4 on your, well, if it's the same one, you've got to press 4 on your keypad to allow you to go through as a friend and family. So it's really quite a good system. But what I was thinking was, we haven't really put very many of them out, if that is the system that I'm thinking of. And only 37 within the last year. Do we have the funding to do more of this? Because it really does work, I can assure you. Because my mum gets no calls whatsoever, apart from the council, and then she doesn't want to speak to them because she thinks they're at it.
Thank you. Let me get more information on both the system that we use and the resourcing that sits behind that. And again, we'll circulate that around the full forum.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going back to page 37. Something similar to what Ross has said. Is with the weights and measures, most of the stock, most of the products are pre-packed now. So that's why I'm surprised at the number of contraventions of 119 from 169 visits. That's very disproportionate. And there have been a fair number of issues and concerns raised about mainly selling vapes to underage children because of the fact that there's a big issue of organised crime, opening up shops, pop-up shops, and selling them. And with the current legislation the way it is, it's very difficult. You go in and you take the goods away and they're opened back up within an hour. And the fine really is a slap in the wrist. So I think that maybe there needs to be a wee bit more work done in that, because I think that if that doesn't get addressed, I think as the matter's going to get worse, and the youth are going to have more access to restricted goods.
Again, I'll get you some further detail sitting behind that.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? No. Can I move this for the report to be agreed?
And I'll second it.
Thank you. Everyone agreed? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 6 is just transitioning to a post-carbon society. And Adam Walls to speak. Hello, Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully...
Presentation.
No, there we go. Yeah, thank you.
It's a presentation. It's a presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to take you through this presentation around just transition and the Council's work in this area. That Alison referenced in the previous paper as well, actually, just to give you a bit more information on that. So I thought it'd be quite useful to... Oops, if we can move this on a wee bit. There we go. Oh. There we go. Sorry. So I thought it would be quite useful to start explaining what a just transition is. So essentially, just transition is a concept emphasising equitability in the process of transitioning to a post-carbon society. So as we undertake work to reduce our emissions and address the impacts of climate change, we must make sure that the ways that we're doing this are fair and inclusive, and that we support workers, communities and industries that may be negatively impacted by the change. This presentation will look at how we define a just transition, what it might look like in practice, and the work that the Council is doing to ensure a just transition for South Lanarkshire. So, what does a just transition mean? Just transitions tend to be defined in two different ways. The stricter definition focuses on the need to offer state support to workers and communities who will lose their livelihoods due to a deliberate shift away from the fossil fuel industry. A broader definition calls for justice in more general terms. It emphasises the importance of not continuing to sacrifice the well-being of vulnerable groups for the sake of advantaging others. We should consider both of these definitions in how we deliver a just transition to ensure that we focus on those most in need, while also acknowledging the holistic impacts and the potential for good. So perhaps the best way to look at this is to say that it is the process of shifting to an environmentally sustainable economy in a way that is fair and equitable to all, particularly those who may be negatively impacted by the shift away from polluting industries. It looks at how we can tackle social inequity and climate change simultaneously. Climate action is exciting, and it offers us an opportunity to address other issues at the same time. A focus on delivering these co-benefits is critical. We'll now look at some of the challenges and opportunities in this area. So to start with the challenges, looking at some of the challenges that we face now and in the move towards a more low-carbon, more sustainable world. We'll focus on housing and mobility and see what a just transition might look like in these areas. Around housing challenges, we know that there's potentially issues around the affordability, safety and habitability of some of the housing stock that we have in South Lanarkshire. Around fuel poverty, we know that 22% of South Lanarkshire's population are currently living in fuel poverty. And when we talk about things like retrofit, so going back installing insulation, PV panels, low carbon heating systems, we know that there can be a huge cost implication along with this, with these kind of interventions as well. When we talk about mobility, we know that low emission zones and electric vehicle infrastructure can also present significant costs for people, as well as challenges around around accessibility and inequity. Public transport accessibility, affordability is also a massive issue that we need to look at. This is particularly true in our rural areas, of which we have a lot of in South Lanarkshire. There's also things that we need to consider which may not, we may not initially consider, such as the safety on public transport being a challenge for certain groups and a barrier to them accessing things like public transport. So these are the challenges that we know that we need to address to move towards a low carbon, more sustainable society. We should note that not all of them are directly related to net zero and sustainability, but we need to look at how we can address these simultaneously as we move forward, as well as addressing the more carbon-focused or sustainability-focused ones. Otherwise, we risk missing an opportunity for addressing both at the same time. So, to then speak a little bit about the opportunities, hopefully, there we go. So we have the opportunity to address these challenges and how we deliver our services. So when we look at housing, we know that affordable and fit for purpose social housing can be insulated, safe and accessible. By using more sustainable energy sources and energy efficient and building energy efficient homes and retrofitting energy efficient homes, we have the potential to reduce energy costs for residents, as well as creating environmental benefits of reduced emissions. We can also have healthier homes for people with reduced damp and ultimately have happier citizens as well. The opportunities for community benefit through things like land trusts and cooperatives means that we can deliver housing that has multiple benefits. Looking at mobility and transport, by improving public transport, particularly in the rural area, we can deliver huge benefits for residents, as well as ensuring people have the services and amenities that they need and that they're accessible, and make sure that they are providing those services as locally as possible. Furthermore, active and sustainable transport can create safer streets, cleaner air and healthier residents. And just to give a little bit of a visual representation of how that might work. So the house on the left we can see is unadapted, it's potentially emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. We're losing heat by being uninsulated, and there's a significant cost associated for that for the resident in heating that home. If we're looking at a just transition and how we move towards a more sustainable world by providing interventions such as improved ventilation, roof insulation, solar panels, smart meters, wall insulation and double glazed windows, can make sure that we are realising some of these wider benefits.
Is it done?
No. Can we get that back up? Oh, there we go.
There we go. A brief interruption. So yeah, by delivering these interventions, we can create homes that are not only more sustainable, but also have these wider benefits for people as well. Healthier, more affordable, and more accessible. So realising these opportunities will help us to deliver a just transition. So now we'll take a wee minute to talk about what the Council is doing in this area. What are we doing to ensure that we are delivering a just transition? So, since 2023, we've been working with a student from Glasgow Caledonian University, Sage Kuhns. Some of you may have already seen a presentation from Sage on this work. So she has undertaken a PhD in climate justice. The study looks to understand who is vulnerable to climate change in South Lanarkshire and what action should be taken to ensure that the transition to net zero emissions is fair to everyone. Climate change affects everybody differently. Vulnerable people are often characterised as those being most exposed to the negative impacts of climate change, like heat and flooding. However, there are additional factors such as income, race, gender and age, which may increase one's vulnerability. So we want to look at what that looks like for individuals in South Lanarkshire. This research will ultimately contribute to policy making intended to improve the lives of South Lanarkshire's residents by reducing both their vulnerability to climate change and their contribution to global carbon emissions. The overall research aim for this piece is to assess the vulnerability and adaptive capacity in relation to climate change in South Lanarkshire, which will inform interventions essential for facilitating a just transition. So the research objectives for this piece specifically are to identify protected characteristic groups and vulnerable communities, conduct a capacity assessment of communities' ability to participate in the adaptation and decarbonisation of housing and mobility. So that just means how are we able to make sure that people are engaged, have the knowledge, have the time, have the resources to take, to participate in this. Objective 3 is looking at advising on measures for achieving a just transition, focused on adaptation and building climate resilience for those most at risk. Objective 4 is looking to implement procedural justice through community engagement. That means that we're ensuring that the people who are affected by policies and changes are involved in the decision-making process and inform and shape the outcomes from this work. And finally, Objective 5 is looking at is to contribute to the advancement of just transition and adaptation policy in South Lanarkshire. So how are we doing this? So the research has 4 main ways of data collection. Oops, gone too far there, sorry. There we go. So we have, oh dear, sorry. So we have focus groups, interviews, participant observation and surveys. So the focus groups are being conducted with around 3 per locality with purposeful sampling, which means that we're ensuring that we're targeting those potentially most vulnerable and identifying any gaps in the data and addressing those gaps. So if there are people that we are recognising that we haven't had a chance to speak to, we're specifically targeting groups that are working with them so that we make sure that we're capturing that input. Interviews are being conducted in much the same way, but those are more one-on-one or two-on-one kind of interviews to just get a little bit more kind of depth of analysis around that. Also undertaking participant observation, which is working directly with community groups across South Lanarkshire, seeing what they're doing day in, day out, and speaking to people in a more kind of comfortable setting. And then finally, there's a survey that's been administered in partnership with the council. It's an online survey, and it's asking people to give us their thoughts and opinions on just transition and what that would look like locally. In terms of that discrete choice method that it mentions there, that just means that we're asking respondents to choose between different options, presenting participants with hypothetical choice scenarios and asking them to select their preferred opinion. So the survey is going to be open till around October, so we're still gathering data from the survey at the moment, and so far we have around 300 responses, but we're hopeful that that will increase. If we get to October and we want to collect more, we have the option to keep the survey open after October as well. So looking at the geographical spread of the groups that we've been working with, we've been sure to make sure that we're speaking to groups across all 4 of South Lanarkshire's localities, and each of those little pins represents a community group that we have been working with. So we've ensured an equal geographical spread across all of the localities, and the survey is following much the same approach. We're collecting postcode data through the surveys and to make sure that we can address any geographical gaps in the responses that we're receiving. So to touch on the preliminary findings of the research, what we found is that climate adaptation is not a priority among most participants, which, sorry, a bit jumpy. So it's not a priority among most participants, which, to be honest, hasn't been a huge surprise. What we have found is that although people are interested, their interest is often focused around issues looking at unfairness. So, for example, for rural areas experiencing public transport issues more acutely, it makes it more difficult for them to opt into more sustainable methods. We're also seeing that an understanding of a need to highlight co-benefits associated with a transition towards net zero is important in making the case for climate action, and the work that the many climate-focused community groups that we've been working with has emphasised that. The second bottom point around this dissatisfaction with current SLC initiatives, that's quite a complicated picture, because not only does it take in the perception that the council aren't doing enough, but it also looks at instances where people think that the council are perhaps doing too much, actually. An example may be around cycle path installation, where some people want to see more cycle paths and a lot of people want to see less cycle paths. So that that can be quite a challenging kind of issue for the council to address and how we're going to respond to this. And then finally, there certainly is a desire around participants to understand more about climate change. So we are looking at how we can work with organisations like the Lanarkshire Climate Action Hub to look at how we expand community knowledge and awareness around climate action and a just transition. So what will we do with the research? So a key output from the research piece is to deliver place-based policy interventions co-developed with participants and stakeholders. We want to make sure that the research is informing the development and implementation of strategies and plans within the council, and so far we've had the opportunity to look at how this can influence the development of the Local Development Plan 3, Local Transport Strategy, Local Housing Strategy, Community Plans and the Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy. By having cognizance of and incorporating learning from the research, we can ensure that our work has just transition at its core. So to sum up with some conclusions, to deliver a just transition, it is essential that the Council continues to engage with our communities, to identify which South Lanarkshire residents and areas are most vulnerable to climate change, to understand what vulnerability looks like on a very localised basis, to identify the measures to build resilience and adaptive capacity within individuals and communities, to build in just transition considerations into council policy, and to mainstream just transition planning within all the work that we do. By doing this, we can deliver not only a more sustainable, low carbon and climate change resilient local authority, but also a more equitable one as well, where residents are healthier, have better access to the services that they need, live in more comfortable and better suited homes, and where inequality is reduced. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening today. I hope you found that interesting. And of course, if there are any questions, we'd be more than happy to take them just now. Or if you have anything afterwards, if you want to follow up, that's also fine.
Are there any questions? Ross?
Thank you, Chair. More so comments than questions. I think I would, like to thank Adam for the presentation. Certainly a very good overview of the position and the work that's been done, and kind of the studies which are, or the research that's been undertaken. I do quite like the focus on communities and engaging with communities throughout this, because I think there is that recognition that in order to fully achieve a just transition, we need to be able to take people with us, and that obviously involves engaging with communities, community groups and individuals. And of course we've got that kind of a spread across the localities, because obviously there'll be different issues affecting different areas related to a just transition. So that's really good to see. I think the challenge within that, perhaps relates to communication. You've got kind of the wider political landscape, which of course won't ask officers to get into, but you see a lot of climate disinformation, and I think that has been rising the past couple of years. So there's a challenge on kind of us as politicians as well, governments, to combat that and promoting kind of, as was spoken about, the co-benefits of climate change and being able to, help grow that understanding that, tackling climate change and ensuring a just transition, it does benefit people in more ways than you might think. So I think there is that challenge in moving forward, and obviously we need to kind of always be looking at our own communications that we're putting out. So I think that's also, a big challenge that we've got going forward. I know there was a paper that came to a recent climate change around kind of communication strategies, so that there is that work ongoing. So it is good to see what is happening, but there are obviously challenges moving forward within that.
Thank you, Ross. Is there any more questions or comments? No? Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for your report. That was excellent. For your presentation, sorry. Okay, we're going to agenda item 7 is the forward plan for future meetings. I've asked for this to be added because I think that in the previous Equal Opportunities Forum, which most of us sat in, I think that we had asked all our elected members what they wanted added in. So I think this is going to be part of exactly what we're going to do again. So we're going to invite Ali Floyd, who's just recently joined, a month ago, was it?
Thank you very much, Chair. And it is 3.5 weeks, so it's fantastic to be here. For anyone who I haven't met, I am indeed Ali Floyd. I'm a Learning and Development Advisor. And for the purposes of this meeting, both the Consultation, Organisational Development and Equality team and Seniors Together team sit under my remit. So hopefully lots of engagement going forwards. And as Councillor Razak said, this is very much a call for ideas to find out what issues really matter to you and your wider communities so that we can build out the programme for this committee. I'm very open to ways that we do that. My suggestion from previous employment would be something like a Microsoft form. We use that as a gathering pot. We can set up email links, we can set up QR codes, get the message out that we're open for business. Very open to further conversation about how we do that.
Okay. Really, because of the forum being employees, equality, diversity and inclusion, which is a bit of a mouthful when you're trying to explain to someone what you do. I think that it would be beneficial because I think that the elected members and also the officers would want to look at it and say, right, in the next few years, what do we want included in the reports? What do we want discussed? And I think it would be a great idea, not just shouting out today, because like I said, this has just been included into the agenda item, that this form gets emailed out to the forum, and then from there we can get the replies back and we can start collating them. Then we can put them in order and see if we can start addressing them. I think that will help the elected members make sure that we're ticking the boxes that we are aware of, concerns we're aware of, and that we can work on. And I think on the officer side of it as well, that will be quite interactive as well, so that we can do it in an organised way rather than just ad hoc. So, Tony?
Thanks very much, Chair. Welcome, Ali. I met you, I think it was Monday, for the first time. We had a great conversation. And just to say that, as I indicated, you will have all the support that you need. We're taking this work forward from the trade unions, and just a sort of welcome to SLC.
Okay, thank you, Tony. And any other comments? Oh, Ali?
Thank you very much. And yet, I would envisage this to be very much a living document that will help us build an evidence base for the long term. So it'll be interesting to look back over the next few years to see what comes in and what we can solve.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great. If there's no more comments, then I take it we are agreed to go ahead with that and put that out to our members and officers. Okay. Thank you. There's no urgent business. And the next meeting is on the 5th of November, which will be fun, 5th of November. But I'd like to close the meeting and thank everyone for coming. Thank you.